And actually, just to make sure that everybody is taken into account, if Oakland and LA can each just let us know who's physically there so that we can have everyone accounted for. Do you want to start with Oakland?
Good morning, everybody. It's Bob Redlow, and I'm the only one here.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Los Angeles? Los Angeles, can you hear me?
Looks like Diane's.
Okay, we'll follow up with them again out of respect for everyone's time. We'll follow up with them offline on who needs to be recorded there. So Los Angeles, no, can you hear me now? Okay. I don't know if they can hear me. If someone can follow up on that. Okay. And we have, Jeremy Smith's here also.
Hey, everybody.
Thank you, Jeremy. Sorry about that.
Did you see my text?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. So our meeting process, this meeting is being conducted via teleconference on the Zoom platform. Only staff and board members in the noticed and open.
I can't hear you guys.
Okay. You can't hear me in Los Angeles? Can somebody?
I know.
Okay, can somebody talk to them offline? Can someone call? Okay.
Don't mess with anything. It's good.
Sure.
Let's mute them for now.
No audio.
Okay, let's mute them and talk to them offline.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Only staff and board members in the notice and open to the public teleconference locations are on the Zoom platform itself. The public can view this meeting via live stream on our CWDB YouTube page and in person at the California Workforce Development Board here in Sacramento, which we're actually in the Department of Rehabilitation specifically, and EDD satellite locations in Oakland, Los Angeles, as listed in the meeting notice on our website. A link to the YouTube page, meeting agenda, and board packet information can be found on the CWDB webpage at cwdb.ca.gov under State Board Meetings and Archives. This meeting is being recorded. By being present, you consent to being recorded. A recording of this meeting will be posted on the CWDB YouTube page. Public comment is now open and will be accepted via email at boardpubliccomment@cwdb.ca.gov.
Oh, they're back.
If we could please mute Los Angeles. Okay, thank you. And I'm also happy to recognize public comment for those that are at one of the locations. All emails will be read aloud during the public comment periods noted on the agenda and will be included in the meeting minutes as part of the public record. We can allow for 3 minutes for each comment, so please be concise. To request to speak, please use the raised hand feature. You can type speak into the chat function and I can recognize you that way. You can also type questions in the chat. We will try to get to those as well. I want to note that anything that is typed in the Zoom chat box is included in the meeting minutes as part of the public record. So before we go to the action item, there's a couple of things I want to start with that I think is important that's not on the agenda. One, we are very fortunate to have our new executive director for California Workforce Development Board, Kaina Pereira, who's joining us from GoBiz, Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, and Kaina can share a little message about his background and why he's chosen. We're very grateful.
Thank you so much, Chair Farouk. So for the last 5.5 years, I worked over at the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development in a number of different roles. The primary one was in business investment services. So, hoping to attract companies to California. And in those dialogues, there was always 3 or 4 different things that came up. And primary to that was a skilled and trained workforce. And so in referencing and understanding that dynamic, coming here and trying to get a better understanding of how supply and demand plays within this marketplace, is extremely important to me. And so a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is around proper formation and compliance of the board to be able to do that charge. And so I'm really excited to take up this opportunity and to really start getting into the weeds on how we can make our workforce system adaptable to the needs of both the industry and the growing opportunities that California faces all the time. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Kaina, and we're very fortunate to have someone with your leadership and experience, and for this to also be a basis of having more cohesion within the administration across agencies. So thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
The second thing on a more somber note, one of our very long-standing board members, Michael Gallo, passed away recently, and he's a personal friend and dear friend to many of ours, and he has not just been active from the state perspective. He's a private sector board member, and he has long served in San Bernardino County Workforce Board. One of our board members has known him actually for 3 decades, is it? Jamil Dada. So I'm going to hand it over to Jamil to share kind of a little bit of personal perspective on his life.
Thank you, Dr. Farouk. Yeah, I knew Mike Gallo for 30 years. We worked very closely together in the Inland Empire on workforce. In fact, I always teased him and I said, when I grow up, I want to be the Mike Gallo of Riverside County, because he was San Bernardino County. And he was CEO of Kelly Space and Technology, a small defense contractor. And he did have some defense contractors. His office was at the former Norton Air Force Base, which is now San Bernardino Airport. But he also had an apprenticeship school where he was so focused on upskilling or middle skilling the workforce. He was also a member for a long time of the San Bernardino City School District, elected official. And then he also served for a couple of years on the San Bernardino County Office of Education as a trustee. But sadly, he was young, but every day is a gift and you never know. But we're very honored to have him with us for 12 years, and we're surely going to miss him, especially in the Inland Empire in our region, because he was an amazing, iconic workforce leader. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about him.
Thank you, Jamil. And later we will adjourn in his memory also. So our next portion of our agenda.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just a comment from Oakland. A
Yes,
couple quick
please.
things. One, this is Bob Redlow. One is, I did not know that Mike Gallo had passed, and that's kind of a shocking news. And we did a lot of work with him as well. And I just want to give our condolences and notification to his family and to us. He was really a vibrant part of our board, and I just wanted to add those comments. And thanks for letting us know. Second thing is, we have another person that's joined us. His name is Tony Munez, M-U-N-O-Z, from the Carpenters Union. And he's just joined us as an observer for the meeting. So I just wanted to let you know he was here. Thirdly, I just want to give a warm welcome to our new executive director. You don't know all of us yet, but I'm sure you've been told a little bit about us. So we look forward to working with you. We're really excited about new leadership. It's great. I'm one of the longer members of the board. I was appointed back, I think, in the first term of the Brown administration. So it's really good. I see a lot of changes in this board, and I see a lot of new leadership coming on, and it's really exciting. So just a word of a welcome from the board members. And, we're all the way in Oakland and Los Angeles, and maybe you haven't met us yet, but we're pretty active, and we try to be pretty supportive of the work that the Workforce Board has done. And thirdly, Mr. Chairman, I have some comments and observations that I'd like to hold and bring up under other business in the agenda. The sound that we have is kind of on and off. So just wanted to let you know, since we're in a period when the sound is working quite well. So I just wanted to let you know to give me some time later on in the agenda, maybe 5 or 6 minutes for some observations and comments about what's happened. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Redlow. Your sentiments are appreciated, and your insights are always invaluable. So we'll definitely be a pleasure to circle back with you at that time. And so we'll proceed now to the action item portion of our agenda, consideration of approval of March 13, 2024 meeting. You can find this on page 4 in your agenda packet. Are there any comments or questions from the executive committee members?
Seeing none.
Move approval.
One moment. Emily, is there public comment?
No public comment.
Okay, Jamil calls for a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Jeremy, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions or nays? Okay, that passes unanimously. We'll now turn to our labor agency update. Is that okay? And we are honored to have our Secretary of Labor, Stuart Knox.
Thanks, appreciate it. So obviously budget is on everybody's mind. We should see more this week. So as most people know, it's not a good news budget this year, as was not last year and future years out. So, we've having to make some tough decisions around what cuts will take place within labor agency, as all of the agencies and departments are going to have to do. Really looking at where we can effectively work better together with other agencies and develop strategies to make sure that the outcomes that we are all here for are met, because we all have been brought to these places because we want to do the work that we do. So I think just moving forward with the budget issues, that's going to continue to be an issue. Some other not as bad news. The California Jobs First Council's first meeting today, which is with 9 agencies, and this kind of goes to the coordination level issue of working with other agencies as much as Abby has done with HHSA. This brings together 9, well, including the PUC, entities under the Governor's Council to really talk about what are the opportunities for economic and workforce development and growth for the future, and develop strategies for which we can utilize each other's funds in a much better way, much like SB 150 was for the 50 million for the workforce board. So looking at ways we can better leverage for the future the opportunities. The Jobs Act coordination still continues through IST, the strike team that the governor put together. That includes 8 of the agencies within that, which the labor agency sits on, I sit on. And so the coordination between those agencies, much similar to the Jobs Council, making sure that we're, 1, drawing and utilizing as much federal funds as we can, but 2, how do we leverage workforce development opportunities within that, and also gauge what the outcomes look like, because I think that's the key piece that I think we need to continue to look at. The Master Plan of Education, which is another council, the Master Plan Council, I also sit on now, which was different than any of the other administrations. And so they actually brought workforce development to the table on education. Amazing. Probably a good news thing. And so actually Dee Dee Myers and myself from GoBiz both sit on that council now, which is a little bit unique to the way we used to sit. And there's been 2 meetings to date on that, and a lot of work through WestEd and other entities around really developing strategies. I think our next big hurdle is, we're talking on a walkover, is really bringing industry and labor into those conversations in a much robust area, so that we have those conversations take place. And labor does actually sit on the table. Jeff sits on the table, which is good news. So I think, we're looking at higher levels of coordination within the administration to make sure that we're leveraging all the resources we have to make sure that we have the outcomes we want. I think lastly, and I'll give this to Abby mostly, because I think she's the one who worked on it most, is the Hilton Foundation funding that you've also been able to leverage and get access to.
Yeah, so the Hilton Foundation awarded $500,000 to the Corporation for Skilled Workforce, CSW, longtime trusted workforce intermediary, has worked around the country to really support the labor agency and all of our partners and the departments in articulating a youth workforce strategy that aligns well with the Career Ed Master Plan and supports our participation in that plan. So just awarded, much more to come on that, but I think it's a long awaited infusion of resources to help us do some really important.
That's it for labor agency.
Thank you. And Is the budget update separately or was your?
I think he did that simultaneously.
I think simultaneously.
Yeah,
okay.
Included that. There'll be more to come.
And legislative update, was that encompassing also?
Yeah, I mean, I can. I didn't know if you guys wanted your own legislative update. I mean, there's pieces of legislation moving through at all levels. Most of our heavy lift just for agency is DIR, just to be honest. So we have probably 400 bills that we track within labor agency. A good portion of those are DIR bills, just labor commissioner's office, workers' compensation, Cal OSHA, and Division of Friendship Standards, of course, is included in that. So we have a lot of work that happens there. We have the ETP bill that is moving through as well. And then the Workforce Board has several bills that are also being vetted through Kindness team. So just looking to working with the legislature as we move these through the process and see what May brings.
Thank you. Thank you, Secretary Knox. Before we go to the next portion, I want to give opportunity for comments or questions from the executive committee to Secretary Knox.
I had one, but if you want to go online first, that's fine.
You go ahead.
Okay.
Jeremy.
Thank you, Secretary, for that update. I just wanted to really impress upon you and this committee and the board the importance of this master plan for CTE commission. I'm not sure what we're calling it.
Yeah.
As a 20-year advocate here in Sacramento for the construction trade union workers and that industry, I can tell you that at the state capitol, there has been a prevailing push to get everybody to go to college. Not our college,
Right.
which is apprenticeship, right? Yeah. But 4-year traditional sort of stereotypical education. And that's turned a bit over there through your efforts, Secretary, and your predecessors and Governor Brown and Governor Newsom, of course. But this is a real opportunity to change how we do career technical education in this state. Governor Brown was facing a tremendous budget deficit early in his term, and he had to take away all the categorical funding for education in the state, and that included CTE. And so instead now of them getting money and they had to do CTE, they didn't have to do CTE anymore. And a lot of schools didn't do it. And it's a shame because high school used to be preparing people either for a post-secondary education in the college setting or a career. And so we've lost that. And I would say that it's not going to be very long when somebody in this room is going to call for a plumber and we're going to have to wait a month to get a plumber. I'm just using plumbing as an example. Right?
Actually, that sounds good for what.
Yeah,
Right.
It's about right. Yeah.
You can't get an app to be able to do it.
Yeah, well, you just use the handy app, right? We have 450,000 members, so building buildings like this, there's plenty of plumbers for that, right? Just to use the plumber example, stretch it out. But we need to let kids know that there's something for them if college is not in their future, because either they don't want to go to college, or they can't afford college, or they want to work with their hands, and they aren't exposed to that in high school like they used to anymore. So there's a very deep-seated desire in the education community to send everybody to college. And this is a moment. And then corollary to that, I would say, and Jeff Freitas, who serves with you on that commission, the president of the California Federation of Teachers, can expound on this. But the pipeline of teachers for CTE is also crimped. And because high schools, school districts weren't offering CTE as a course that you could get a job to teach. And so people stopped getting their certificates to do that. And so that's I would suggest to you another thing to talk about in this space.
And the credentialing.
And that's what I mean, the credentialing for that, right?
Yeah. No.
Unnecessarily.
Right.
Absolutely. Right. No, agree 100%. I mean, statistically, we can see the path, and this is national, this isn't just California, but the path to success typically is education, right? When you look at, and then you have the apprenticeship side, which is also to success, but it's very small in comparison. As we know, the membership of the union side is very small in comparison. And so we've got to ramp that up, and we have to work with education to figure out how competency-based education plays a role within that system as well, through the K-12 system, and potentially through the community college system as well. So those are the challenging conversations we are absolutely having. Pop has even over at the community colleges for a while too, of really looking at how those pathways are built and continued is the core of it. Yeah.
If it was all working right,
Yeah.
there wouldn't be a need for this meeting today
Right.
and this board. Because people would know where they're going and they would have jobs, right? I mean, so many of the folks that we serve and our local boards serve are people who drifted.
Yeah.
Right? And they're looking for work now because they didn't have an access to what they wanted to do
I'm
after high school.
wondering if you heard my speech that I said that to a bunch of community colleges about a week ago. I said, please put us out of business.
Right.
Because we exist
Yeah.
in the face of a failed education system generally. Not, and I use failed in parentheses, of not fully failed, but you know, it's a dysfunctional system for which people don't have a pathway. And so if you don't choose education, we see that as something else.
Right.
Low wage earning jobs. And so, and then.
In our space, they're not that.
Exactly.
They're not low wage.
But it's so small.
Right.
And we've got to grow that. So
Right.
I think that's the core.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane Factor?
Yeah, hi. Welcome to the new director. And my name is Diane Factor. I'm based in Los Angeles. I hope to get up there for the full meeting. First, I didn't catch your name, the person who made the last comment.
Jeremy Smith?
Okay,
From the
Jeremy,
Building Trades.
thank you. I'm an adjunct professor at LA Trade Tech College. I'm also, a big proponent of the colleges and of the apprenticeship programs, but I just want to expand the focus beyond construction and construction careers, because as you know very well, the construction industry and many of the unions have beautiful apprenticeship facilities. And you don't really need to go to college if you go through that is college at the IBEW and some of the other apprenticeship programs that are run directly by the unions. But I do think the apprenticeship concept apply to service sector, healthcare, and manufacturing are sorely needed, and they're high growth industries. And, I'm old enough to remember when Los Angeles was the industrial base of this country, and that we had over 1 million workers in industrial manufacturing centers making union wages and union benefits. And when that collapsed in the 80s and 90s, it created a lot of our homeless problems that we have today. It created Skid Row in Los Angeles. If you've never been there, it's very impressive. So I like the discussion. I like partnering with community colleges, but I still believe in the expansion of the apprenticeship model into other important industrial sectors that provide permanent jobs, which is something you can't guarantee in construction.
Thank you, Dan. Before you mute, is there anyone else at the Los Angeles location that we can mark for attendance purposes?
No, it's just me and the gentleman who's helping me with technology. Today we got picture, but we didn't get sound, but I'm working off my laptop. That's why you see 2 of me.
No,
Yeah.
it's all good. We're happy to see
Yeah,
as many of you as.
Yeah, it's working. They're delightful here. It's just always a challenge. We're in East Los Angeles and bandwidth is still not prevalent everywhere in our community. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for those comments. Thank you for that great report. And we'll go to the state plan. Kind of who will be leading that on your staff? We're gonna do the public comment all at once with the whole section. I just figured since this would be more timely to get feedback from the board. Who's doing this?
I will.
Okay, I'll turn it over to kind of
So quick update on the state plan. We've submitted information to the Department of Labor as required on the compliance side, but also included in our annual report. We have received responses from the Department of Labor that we are currently going through. There are some revisions that they're asking us. Some of them are compliance related, but most of them are really, further explanation into the detail that we provided. Those are currently being reviewed by both our team and by labor agency, and we should be submitting those. Actually, I think we're required to submit them tomorrow. So we will be doing that. And then in the next meeting, we'll be able to give a better update on the finalization of the state plan.
Sounds good. The last portion of this agenda, then we can take comments from the board and the public on the whole section, is review of California workforce development, legislative mandate and compliance efforts. I'm assuming this is Brooke. Correct.
Yep, that's me. Good morning, everyone. Can you see me and hear me all right? My name is Brooke Barnum Roberts. Wonderful. I got a thumbs up from Diane. I'll take it. I am Chief Counsel for the California Workforce Development Board, and I put together a PowerPoint presentation just to walk you through the board's legislative mandate and some compliance efforts we've taken to date, because our board is large and there is turnover. And sometimes it's easy to forget these things or lose sight of exactly what it is we should be doing in our work. So it's just an opportunity to refocus us. I'll take about 10 minutes just so you all have some signposting with regards to time. And let's just dive in. Next slide, please. So yes, I already kind of said this, but our goals are here threefold: to provide a legal refresher on the role of responsibilities of the board and the members on the board, to summarize compliance efforts and where we're going with those, and to energize and mobilize the board to engage with the mandate. Next slide, please. First, a reminder about organizational structure. The Workforce Development Board is under the umbrella of the Labor and Workforce Development Agency with a number of other boards. And above sort of the LWDA is the governor. So we report basically to the governor through LWDA. Next, please. Our legislative mandate is mainly laid out in the Unemployment Insurance Code. So we'll start with section 14010. It says that we're the body responsible for assisting the governor in some important duties: the development, the oversight, and the continuous improvement of California's workforce investment system, and the alignment of education and workforce investment systems to the need of the 21st century economy and workforce. Next, please. As I said before, we do report through LWDA, or the Labor and Workforce Development Agency, and this is part of our legislative mandate as laid out in the following section. Next slide, please. We get to the meat of what the board's supposed to be doing in this section, which is section 14013. The board has a number of duties, including that first general duty, which is promoting the development of a well-educated and highly skilled workforce, the development of a high-road economy that is going to have a workforce that's both educated and skilled and gets fair compensation and treatment in the workplace. So that's kind of an overarching, I think, goal of the board. Under B, we develop, we implement, and we modify the state plan. As you've seen here today, it's something that our staff has been hard at work at for months. Under C, we, excuse me, bug in my throat today. Under C, we review and provide technical assistance for statewide policies, programs, and recommendations on actions that should be taken by the state to align workforce education, training, and employment funding programs to support a comprehensive, high quality, and streamlined workforce development system in the state. And I think looking at C alone, you could just say, oh, this is another one of these general things. But if you really focus on it, what we're supposed to be doing here is alignment, right? Creating a high quality workforce development system and making sure that it's comprehensive. And I think under our new executive director, he's helping us refocus on that goal. Next slide, please. Same code section here. D says that some of the things we can do to continuously improve the workforce development system is identifying barriers and how to remove them. Developing, promoting, and implementing strategies for career pathways for various populations that need help there. Also developing, promoting, and implementing outreach to needy areas and strategies for industry-specific and in-demand fields, right? So that speaks to keeping our finger on the pulse of where the demand is, right? And looking at specific industries. Developing standards for defining high road terms, using lessons learned from ongoing high road initiatives. So as most board members know, but just for the members of the public that might be listening in, we have had many high road initiatives over the years. And one of the jobs is to develop those standards and learn from lessons. To administer high road training partnerships and to recommend policies for dislocated and adult workers. Next slide, please. The board shall also assist the governor with identifying regions and designating local areas. So thinking about the workforce development system, not just as a whole, but looking at it regionally, because each region has its own interests and issues. Developing one-stop delivery systems. So places that a worker can go to receive the services they need. I think that's what the one-stop stands for. And recommending strategies to the governor on 15% discretionary funds in WIOA. So those federal funds, helping the governor out and directing those funds. And developing strategies to support training and awareness across the workforce development system. Next slide, please. In doing this, the board's assisting the governor in developing and updating comprehensive state performance accountability measures required under WIOA, and that's under I. And I wanted to break this subsection out just to focus on what the CWDB has available at its disposal, and that's a research team that can develop these metrics and then break down how we're meeting them, right? What is the performance of specified programs, and dig into what are the participant earnings, what are the demographics that we're serving, and how successful are the efforts. And collection and reporting duties are also in other other pieces of legislation, including section 14014 and 14017.1. So data collection and reporting is a big part of what the board should be doing under its legislative mandate. Next, please. Under J, we see that the board should be assisting the governor in identifying and sharing best practices on operating these one-stop centers to help workers or folks in need of work, on developing local boards, and on effectively running training programs based on data and market analysis. In K, it says that the local board should develop and review statewide policies on one-stop centers. And in L, we should develop strategies for tech improvements to improve access and quality of services activities in a one-stop center. So there's quite a bit that the board can do around these one-stop centers and making sure that they're operating as efficiently and as effectively as they can. M also speaks to developing strategies to align tech and data systems, but here specifically for one-stop partner programs. And that's to enhance accountability and performance, making sure that funds are being used as effectively as possible. And then in N, we're asked to develop allocation formulas for programs, and in O, to prepare annual reports. Next slide, please. There's a few more here. I promise we're almost done with this section. In P, the board is asked to develop statewide workforce and labor market information system. So more of this reporting, coming up with metrics and making sure that we're measuring what's happening. In Q, we're asked to work with EDD and local boards to develop agreements to respond to disasters. In R, we're asked to develop policies to promote statewide objectives for the workforce development system. And in S, helping individuals with barriers, low skill, long-term unemployed, and single parents, some of the important groups that might need some extra help here achieve upward mobility. And in T, we're asked to evaluate program outcomes for all CWDB grant programs. Next slide, please. So moving on from this section, let's look at the board. The board, the Workforce Development Board here is fairly large, right? And that's because there are rules and laws that say that the board has to have certain composition requirements. And we're auditing those various laws which are being projected right now to confirm that we're complying with them. So right now we're in the midst of a compliance review, and there may be an addition of, a number of board members to ensure compliance moving forward. Next slide, please. The board operates under its own bylaws as well. And so I just wanted to take a moment to touch on a couple of the key things in those bylaws, and that's committees and an attendance expectation. Next slide, please. So first, there are various, there's a provision for various standing committees, and this is one of those committees, the executive committee. Standing committees perform continuing functions, and they're permanent committees of the state board. They're comprised of state board members for purposes of voting, and they have to have a minimum of 5 members in addition to the chair and the vice chair. Next slide, please. There are 2 other types of committees allowed for in the bylaws. Special committees, and those are committees that are assigned specific tasks and assignments by the state board chair. Those can include state board members as well as state and local partners, stakeholders, practitioners, and customers, all as voting members. And then finally, there are ad hoc committees. Those are informal work groups, task forces, councils, and other formal subgroups that can be comprised of state board members and staff, as well as state, local partners, stakeholders, and practitioner staff. So basically, you can have members and then outside folks on these committees. They can be established by the chair, the executive director, or special committee chairs, and they are not subject to ratification by the full state board. So ad hoc committees can be a bit more nimble. However, they are time limited and task oriented and are formed to develop work products for the state board. Ad hoc committees that are established remain in existence only as long as they're needed to address fully the tasks with which they're charged. I didn't speak to the attendance piece on the slides, but there is an attendance expectation, and I think our board members have been pretty good at attending board member meetings regularly. So we appreciate that, and just ask that you keep it up. If you miss, I think it's if you miss 3 or more, then we start to consider, is this sort of the right fit for you in the bylaws? All right, bylaws updates. We have a couple of recommended amendments to the bylaws. We looked at these in response to a Department of Labor review. So we are recommending that there's a name change. In 2016, the CWDB was a CWIB, the California Workforce Investment Board, and we have yet to update our bylaws in response to that change. So time to do that. We're also going to update the fact that we want to reflect that members serve at the pleasure of the appointing authority currently. And then there's we're going to also review to see if maybe term limits would make more sense, but that's the current status quo. We're going to update the bylaws regarding the removal process and notification of vacancies on the board. And then there will be some other minor updates for accuracy and clarity. As far as next steps, we will put the full text of proposed amendments to the bylaws before the board. And so the board will have some time to review those, and they can take action in the August meeting regarding those amendments. So moving forward, just to bring us all back, to the same page, we want to ensure compliance. That's going to be an important aim moving forward, and always, right? That's our North Star, making sure we're operating in accordance with our legislative mandate and that we're complying with all expectations. And then we also want to use the board more effectively, right? So thinking about how can we use the board in a way that helps us fulfill our legislative mandate the best that we can, because we have a lot of wonderful, knowledgeable people on this board that are subject matter experts in their industries. And, you know, we don't want to waste that talent. So I think we'll be thinking about that quite a bit moving forward. Last slide, please. And that concludes my presentation. If there are questions, I think that our executive director, Kaina, would be more than happy to answer them, and I'm also available. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brooke, and thank you, kind of both of you, for your diligence, how you're approaching this, create that kind of professional standard and modernization of where we're at with compliance and everything. So we'll open it up to comments and questions from the executive committee before we turn to public comment. Any comments or questions regarding the state plan or the compliance? Diane Factor?
Yeah, hi. So I wondered, I took another look at our code after the last public meeting because it was raised about the report on 150, Senate Bill 150. And I was told by, as well as everyone, by Eric, that there was, we were seeing the report, but that there was no time for feedback on the report by the board because it was due in 2 days or 3 days. And that seemed to be a big issue. And I wondered, my reading of the code is that we shall assist. And so my reading of the code is that we should have been able to see a draft and give feedback and not be rushed and in that way. So it seemed to me that we were not meeting the code obligation because of the way the report was given to us at the last minute. I know you were expecting that question.
I'm not certain how to respond to the inquiry. What exactly what are you looking for in terms of the response from this board? This is a big reason why I wanted to review all of our codes for the compliance understanding, to know what we are responsible for, how the process by which information that flows through the board to the executive director, through the LWDA, and then to the governor, and how we can, you know, ensure that those opportunities are given enough time and enough attention from the board members and board participants. So I'm trying to understand what question you have more explicitly, if you could.
More explicitly, we weren't given time to review or respond, which I see in the code is part of our duty to shall assist. And that's all, you know, that it just, I understand how this happens. I've worked in big government, you know, they were down to the wire. I get it. But at the same time, I think there was a kind of surprise by board members as well as public comment that kind of brought my attention to it personally, you know, and so I would like that addressed. Like that seems to be part of our duty. And because of the last minute or whatever, it felt like it was rushed through without our ability to perform our task.
Dan, you're referring to the last meeting, right?
That's correct.
A public meeting, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Where Jackie Roberts and
Right.
Eric, I didn't catch his last name, but they presented the findings of and their, you know, of their basically draft report. But then when we wanted to have input, they said, oh, no, you don't have time. Basically.
Okay, I didn't get the sense, when you say input, you mean, you obviously don't mean informally in terms of our, or the discussion that we have as board members. You mean from a formal standpoint of submitting something formally? That's what you're referring to, right?
I don't know if it had to be formally or not. I'm not sure of the mechanism, but I'm just saying that we couldn't respond or question really, or think that certain areas should be answered or expanded on or something. We really didn't have any time to have any feedback on the report.
So I'll just say one thing and I'll turn it to Secretary Knox. One disclaimer I just want to say is, this is there was a transition in leadership happening, and it kind of wasn't there in that capacity. But irrespective of that, your point is well taken. We never want to create any kind of perception that our board members are not able to express themselves. And so if there's no intention of that moving forward, but.
Sure, yeah, hey, Dayan, this is Stuart. Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, I think in terms of timing, we could have done that better. Obviously, as you put it, you've worked in big government, you know how this works. We had literally, I think, 2 days to get that back to the legislature, and so there was a timing issue. That said, in the future, we will make sure that the board has ample time to have input. If it's input, that's what we're looking for. I think there was also, in terms of what the law said, the law actually on SB 50 said that the board would have review. It didn't say review, it said, I can't remember exactly what the law said. It said something, because it wasn't to be approved.
It was
by
like
the board.
present.
It was just a
Present.
presentation to the board. So I think we need to be explicit what we're really looking for from the board as well, because I think there was some confusion based on that. So yes, we will improve for the board in the future on that as well.
Just some comments in support of Diane's comments. This is Bob. Many of us, most of us on this board, I mean, we just get through a presentation on how we're codified into state law, and most of us who serve on this board, for the most part voluntarily, are really committed to the work that we do. And it's not an easy group, and it's never been an easy group that just says, well, here's what it is, and you got a day to respond, etc. We think we make a difference. We think the work that we do makes a difference, and it's hard when somebody comes with some important documents for whatever reason and whatever issues are out in the state. We understand all those, but when those issues come to us, we not only want to have comments, but we want impact. We don't want to just be a representative group. We want to show leadership. We want to demonstrate leadership. And I think, these comments, at least from me and maybe Diane and others, are really for the purpose of our new leadership, to say to you, hey, we may be a big board and we represent the state, but we really want to do meaningful work. And we think we've done meaningful work and great work over the last 5 or 10 years. We have many issues, but I think, don't think for a second that you can bring a document to us that makes a difference with a day's notice and tell us that we can make comment, but we don't have impact, because we don't sit well for that. And I think that's what Diane is trying to get at, maybe not for this particular issue, but for issues moving forward.
The point is taken, the experience, the passion, the institutional knowledge that the members of the board contribute is very significant, and it's valued. And so I appreciate you guys bringing that to your attention. And I just want to say too that the conversations I've had, with administration leaders, including those present, all were expressing those sentiments irrespective of even hearing this right now. They were recognizing that these things, and so there's a deep appreciation for all of you. So thank you for reiterating that thought, and we'll obviously take that into consideration moving forward.
Well, I appreciate what you've said. I have now read the report. Now that, once it was filed, I got an actual copy, and I do have some response or critique of things that I think should be in a report of this nature. Should I submit those?
Yeah, because this specific matter is not itemized on the agenda. I want to be mindful of, we do have other business where we can have maybe a little bit broader conversation, but if you have specific recommendations, it's best to put them in writing. And that also ensures from an accountability standpoint that it's being reflected, if that's okay with you, Dan.
Yes, well, why don't you agendize it for the meeting in 2 weeks with the full board?
We can look at the appropriate mechanism to do that, correct?
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate it,
Thank you.
Sometimes it's a little rocky, and so let's just create a smooth path.
Sure. We'll look at the right manner in framing that agenda item. And so, Emily, are there any public comments? And this is for the entire section of updates and discussions.
I have one other comment about the report.
Sure, Mr. Redlow.
Thank you. So, I know that I know that we're talking about a codified document for government, but again, the real truth of the matter is that most of us on the board don't look at us as assistants to the governor. We look at ourselves as leadership to the governor, and the report doesn't really reflect that. And maybe we have the right to amend. I don't know, but we've always looked at the workforce board as a catalyst for change for workforce in this state. And one of the major issues that we have really concentrated on is equity and diversity and income mobility. And it's sort of mentioned in the report, but it isn't really brought out. And that's really a main goal and supportive mission of us at the board to really move the needle, not only in workforce investment and workforce throughout the state, but in equity, in diversity, and in income mobility. And I just don't see that represented in that report. And I think it should be called out more as we move forward. Probably can't make many changes now, but as we move forward, I think that really is the commitment of this workforce board.
I appreciate your sentiments, and we obviously share those values. Maybe Brooke can elaborate, but my assumption based on that report is that she's really just quoting statute and the legal premise as opposed to like our strategic plans and things that embody more of the qualitative nature of what we're doing, where those kinds of values of high road equity.
I'm wondering if he's talking about SB 150.
Oh, you're saying in that specific.
Versus the last presentation.
You're talking about, okay.
As a
Yeah.
report.
Is that
Okay.
correct, sir?
Bob, can you hear kind of?
I'm sorry, what did you say? Could you repeat that?
I just want to clarify, your comment is related to the SB 150 report, correct?
No, I'm talking about the report that we just heard from the
Oh, okay.
attorney.
Okay, cool.
And there was like A through S of all the things we do for our mission. And I just didn't see the equity and diversity and the income mobility called out the way it should be called out. And like I said, we probably can't change it now, but as we move forward, I think we need to improve. I think we got to include words like that. I think we have to make it strong that that's what we're about.
So codification within the UIC.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
And those, if I can just interject briefly, those sentiments are addressed in the definition of the term high road, which is in statute. So.
Well, I appreciate
Thank
the
you.
call out for explicit
Yeah,
understanding of that being a directive of the board. That makes
The
sense.
value of extrapolating that
Yeah.
specifically is noted. So thank you, Bob. So Emily, public input on this?
No email public.
Okay, thank you. So now that takes us to other business. The Political Reform Act requires certain officials and employees who serve in positions designated in the CWDB's Conflict of Interest Code to file a Statement of Economic Interest, FPPC Form 700. Your statement was already due on April 2nd, 2024. Late statements are subject to a $10 per day fine with a maximum fine of up to $100. If you have questions or concerns, please reach out to Ian Hay, who's been proactively, very thoughtful in communications, human resources analyst, who provided the initial filing reminders. Our next full board meeting is May 22nd at 10 a.m. Rest of dates are on our website. Bob, were the comments that you mentioned, is this what you wanted to cover in other business, or was there something additional you wanted to add? You're on mute.
Sorry, all these years and we still haven't learned. I have some additional comments.
Please.
Okay. Thank you. And I chose to do this for the executive board, so we won't take up much of the time of the full board, and this will take about 4 or 5 minutes, but it's really, I think, for the benefit, again, of new leadership that has come to the workforce board, and just I just felt like it's important to to set some foundation and to look at some of the things we've been working at. We sometimes get really involved in all the bureaucratic issues and not so much in the innovative and kinds of programs that we're really trying to look at. So I just, in no particular order, and I want to keep this at a really high level and not get into the weeds because it sounds like complaining. I don't want to sound like that I'm complaining. But and I want to compliment the Workforce Board, particularly recently with the lobbying with the HRTP and the concentrated efforts. And, I am 100% in favor and supporting that. And I couldn't make the legislative day, but we're certainly doing what we can. And I think that's great for the Workforce Board to do that. Again, I take the position, and many of us, I think, agree that we are a leadership group. And of all the groups that are listed in the codified boxes underneath the governor and underneath the Labor Department, I think the California Workforce Board has been the leader and the catalyst for making programs happen and making change that makes a difference, particularly in equity and those kinds of issues. So I just want to compliment the work that's been done by the previous administration and look forward to the work of new administration. Some of us old folks, as Diane has also said, are probably going to go by the wayside in the next couple of years. And, this is kind of legacy work for us in terms as we move forward. But so there are 3 or 4 points. The first point is, we work really hard in providing the kind of training program that makes a difference in this state and reducing barriers. But, we still face, even though we have ETP and we have apprenticeship and we have accelerator and we have WIOA, et cetera, we still don't address the barriers in a way that makes, it makes sense. We've improved a great amount, but we haven't got there. For example, most of us, Diane, others in Los Angeles, people in Fresno, Sacramento, and other people in the Bay Area, we've adopted a model of training that calls for, recruitment, partnering with our workforce boards and our community-based organizations. So we really are able to reach into the community to get the kinds of folks that make a difference and that need some assistance. We've taken on wraparound services as a crucial part of training. We've taken on payment to trainees in one form or another, because we know that if we don't help folks from underserved populations get through training programs and we don't pay them or give them supportive services, that they're going to go back to work at McDonald's and other places, and they're not going to finish the programs and not going to get into career pathways. But the challenge for us and the mission for the Workforce Board is to bring those programs that we have out there together. So very few of our programs allow us to pay participants in training. We've been talking about this for 10 years or more. I've been in this business for 40 years or more. We've been talking about it. Why is that? That's the challenge. If we've agreed that one of the most important aspects of training is supporting the trainees as they go through the program and providing mentorship and providing economic and social and political support. And why don't our grant programs represent that? Why are there barriers to the way we pay people? We just don't get it. So I just want to and this isn't the first time we've talked about this, but I want to make sure that our new leadership understands that that's one of the focuses, and I'm sure you understand, as we move forward. The second point is, and I see this, the second point that I want to talk about is sort of this regionalization that's going on across the state. And it's great that we are trying to get models that are copied across the state, but we're starting to get into competitive programs within regions. This board has agreed for the most part over the years that even though it's good to have consistent programs across the state, that we agree in regionalization, that what's good in Fresno might not be perfect in the Bay Area, and what's not perfect in the Bay Area might not work so well in Los Angeles. But yet we have programs now and folks and third-party intermediaries, me included, I suppose, that know how to work the programs, that know how to apply for funds, and then expand them across. And I'll give you an example. we have two behavioral health programs in the Bay Area, maybe 5 miles apart. One is funded by a group in Los Angeles, and one is funded by our collaborative in the Bay Area. Both programs are pretty good. The Bay Area program has a higher placement and has a higher degree of participation by our participating employers. But, but there is no coordination between the two programs, because the one program is funded out of LA and the other program is funded by our partnership in the Bay Area. I think the challenge is, how do we talk to each other and make sure that that doesn't happen? How do we talk to each other? And we don't want to take away from the good work that other folks do. And that's important to their programs as well. But we got to figure a way to coordinate these kinds of issues. The third point I want to make is really around sort of what I call a zero-sum game. And I think the Workforce Board has been really good at this in their intent to try to give a little bit to everybody, and particularly in the High Road Training Partnership Group and in other, apprenticeship does this as well, and others. And, for example, in one of the previous rounds, there was a $25 million appropriation given out. 13 million went to one organization and 500,000 went to 10 others. Okay. And the 10 others were working with workforce boards and community organizations, and the 13 million was working for their own members. I don't want to criticize anybody's organization. The organizations that they do great work, and particularly concentrate on incumbent workforce. But if we're moving equity and diversity along, we not only have to work on the incumbent workforce, but we got to work on new employees as well. And when you see those kind of numbers and the politicking that goes on within those funds, it doesn't work. We have a commitment, I think, to really work with our workforce boards. And I know there's issues around that for sure, right? In terms of the effectiveness of some of our workforce boards compared to others. But we really want to be able to support our workforce boards and these training funds so that we're working in partnership with community-based organizations to help the kinds of folks that we're talking about if our mission is really one of equity across the state. So I just want to lay out that challenge. And the last challenge that I know that I'm like a broken record on over the years, I haven't spoke on it recently, and that is the issue of tracking and metrics. And, we have made incredible strides in terms of tracking, of having one system. But as we all know, every fund that we have out there, whether it's WIOA or apprenticeship or ETP or accelerator or high road training partner, has its own reporting mechanism. And they've become more standardized, particularly through CAL eForce and some of those things, but they still don't tell us whether we're moving the needle or not. And from the high level, from a global level, we really got to work a whole lot more in terms of having these reports be more consistent and really telling the story of, are we really moving the needle for the money? Are we getting the bang for the buck that we're talking about? And that's the challenge. I think we're doing a great job. I couldn't be more complimentary of the staff of the Workforce Board, which is does great due diligence to the programs. But we really have a huge challenge ahead of us in terms of making this work. And the final point in terms of tracking, most of us have been very successful. I represent a number of health employers in the Bay Area and bring the employers to the table, which I think is really crucial in terms of how we do our programs. And our placement rates are, at least in health, my expertise is in health for the most part. Our placement rates are off the chart. If we're at 95%, there's something wrong. We want to be close to 100% all the time. If we're at 95%, somebody had a problem and didn't do what they were supposed to do or had some problem at home or whatever. But our issue is not just in the placement rate. And for the most part, that's what we track. We track placement rates. We need to continue to track retention rates and whether we're making a difference. So when you look at a lot of entry-level training, whether it's college-based or certificate-based, whether it's certified nurse assistants or MAs or EMTs, we've done a lot of work in the EMT and paramedic area. community health workers or behavioral health counselors and coaches. A lot of money and work that we've done over the years. Our placement rates, again, are great, but our retention rate, we have about a 20 to 25% fall off rate in the first year. Now, some of those folks go on to other career pathways, and that's great, but a lot don't. But we don't track it. We don't track it. And in order to be successful as a total program in the state, we have to do more than fund training programs and then look at placement rates. We have to follow people through their career pathways. So anyway, I just want to lay out these challenges. We have new leadership. I don't talk about this all the time. Maybe I talk about it more than I should. But nonetheless, I just want to bring it to the attention that these are the kinds of things that we look for in leadership of our workforce board, not just to assist the governor, but to be leaders in terms of apprenticeship funding, of ETP funding, et cetera. You know, Diane talked about the model of apprenticeship. I'm a huge proponent of apprenticeship now, particularly in non-traditional jobs and healthcare, et cetera. But, the guidelines don't work. We're still in a structure of business trades, which is great. And thank God the building trades and so forth have given us the model. But the model needs to be just changed slightly for non-traditional jobs. The concept of apprenticeship is great. We call it obviously preceptorships and clinicals, but we really need to adjust our structures to make them work for those programs as well. So I see that as the work and challenges of the workforce board. And I really just want to bring it up in the executive meeting in front of new leadership so that you kind of know what we're thinking about, at least what I'm thinking about. I'm biased, of course, but also kind of what the challenges are moving forward. And I appreciate the time. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob, for those thoughts. And your message is definitely heard. Dan Factor, you want to add?
No, I don't want to add. I have just a simple question, not a.
Sure.
So this is my impressions, and I'm really glad you're all here to help me understand this. So as I understand the budget going forward, given the budget climate in the state, there's 50 million new money for construction careers. And the question I have is that money coming from the federal infrastructure money that's been pouring into the state?
That's correct.
Okay. And so there isn't new money for the high road training partnerships in other industries. And why is that? Is that the budget? The state budget?
Yes.
Okay. So my question then isn't there federal money pouring into the state for some of the green economy build out? I know infrastructure comes kind of first. You got to build the factories and you got to build the railways and so forth. But isn't there step 2 where you have to produce in the green economy all of our the EV batteries we've heard so much about and was mentioned last meeting, and, heat pumps and all these things to green our economy. Didn't we get federal funding for some of that?
So a lot of the IRA money, which you're referring to, has not been deployed yet, but we are working with Partners in Energy and a bunch of other places to try and draw down as much of that is. There has been some commitment related to the ARCHES program, which is related to hydrogen distribution across the state. And I believe that the current assessment is around 1.4 billion that will be received by California through that program. But a lot of the other programs have some inducements directly to businesses, some inducements directly to state organizations, and some that are based on applications. And so there's still a lot of work left to be done in that really massive program. But there are definitely going to be pools of funds available through a lot of our sister agencies to accommodate some of that work that you're mentioning.
Okay, that's good to hear, because I'm hoping, and I get it's a step process. You got to build the infrastructure, then you can do the production. But and And there's also all this talk about the lithium and in Imperial
Yes.
County and all these things. But so is there kind of a commitment or to all, when that money does start to flow into California, and I think, you know, we have a good chance. I mean, we're kind of leaders in all this. I'm very proud of our state, but that some of it will go to the high road training partnerships in those industries?
There is existing or a bill that is currently under review that is similar to SB 150 in the respect of trying to piece out a portion of the funds attracted from IRA, CHIPS, and IIJA into a specific fund that is currently working its way through the legislature. But there are definitely some interest in ensuring that there's a shave off of some of the federal commitments to ensure workforce development planning and programming can be associated with it.
Okay, that's great. What's the number of that bill? I can never find bills.
I will have somebody send it to you. I don't remember. off the top of my
Okay,
head.
yeah,
I have the same
I
problem
get
you
it.
do.
Yeah, I get it. And I just want to say around high road training partnerships, you know, I have pushed that concept, and I want to express just this, that high road training partnerships start with a labor management partnership. And I think it is so critical to engage the employers and to really work with the employer partners. That is like 90%. And so I just want you to know I do represent labor on the board, but my outlook towards high road training partnership is all about the employers. And so I don't really understand the whole go biz concept yet. But
Concept.
I just want you to, I don't think that's out of sync with high road training partnerships in that you have to engage the employers. And in these new technology industries that are coming to our state, you know, the employers don't have trained workers to hire. So they really need these training programs to develop these brand new programs, you know, and quite honestly, I think that labor plays a big role because labor is national. Some of the big industrial unions, so forth, are national. And so they've already gotten some experiences in other parts of the country where this has already been happening. And so they bring a whole body of experience to this work. So I feel this tension between high road and go biz. I don't know if that is true or perceived, but I would like, okay, I would like to see high road training partnerships get back into the budget and kind of a commitment to, if we can get these federal funds, that there be that shave off, as you say, or whatever the word is. Yes, I really endorse that model because I know that those industrial jobs and those, even the lithium jobs and so forth, could be long-term permanent career pathways, which unfortunately you can't guarantee in construction and infrastructure.
Appreciate the sentiments.
Yeah, thank you both, Dan and Bob.
Just one quick thing.
Okay. Yeah, Jeremy.
Yeah, just picking up on one of Bob's points from 15 minutes ago at the very start of his talk. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate everything you said. The Legislative Women's Caucus created the Erica Grant funding a couple years ago, and that money is now on the streets. And to Bob's point about paying people to get training, the demand.
Apprenticeship is appointment.
That's right.
Employment.
But there has been so much demand on those Erica grants. We've had so many of our apprentices sign up for them and want them. And the broader point is some folks that we're serving just need a little hand up, right? Not a handout, but just a little help at the front. And I can tell you that as the entity that provides some technical assistance to the HRCCs, those programs that give them as part of their MC3 training, something, a gas card, bus passes, they are much, much more successful.
Yeah.
And so I know that there's some federal law here about what we can spend, we owe money on, but there's a real glimmer there of something. And I think that helping folks out as they're getting training, same with as we do in our apprenticeship programs. You know, they're making living wages as first period apprentices in most of our crafts, can really help them complete training, which is the goal.
Appreciate that.
Well, one thing I'll just say about this too is, our former Secretary of Labor and now, US Secretary of Labor, Julie Su, she's adopting this mindset of WIOA can, of if there's not something explicitly prohibiting something, what can we do to be flexible? So we might have a partner in the federal government who can give us more discretion and, and our staff can work with that. So thank you all for that valued input. And I'll just say in the spirit of also what Diane said regarding the employer engagement, which is really important. Brooke mentioned about some of the statutorily tools that we have of committees and ad hoc and so forth. So any ideas that people have about how we can enhance employer engagement, industry engagement, welcome those thoughts. I just want to give the disclaimer that depending on the format, depending on bandwidth of what it would involve, these are all fluid situations, but I'm just putting that out there that we're open to ideas. So Emily, do we have any general public comment?
No additional public comment.
Okay, so then we will now come to the end of our meeting, and our next full board meeting, like I said, is May 22nd at 10 a.m. Well, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Can we adjourn in memory of Mike Gallo today?
Yes, we will do that. Well, if you want, you could say that part of the motion, but we were going to honor him when we ended the meeting.
Okay, so motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Jamil. Do we have a second? Second, Jeremy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions or nays? We adjourn in the loving memory of Mike Gallo at 11:17 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sure.